everyone, for today's video, we will tackle all about folk culture. So in this lecture, we will observe folk culture as the culture of the people. The ability of folk culture is to communicate ideas, symbols, meanings, and messages to the audience that remains unchangeable. This video, you will also learn about the types of folk forms and their uses for bringing up the unity to the people. Folk culture is understood to be something primitive, authentic, non-urban, and belonging to the people. Understanding folk culture amounts to tracing the origins and roots of a particular culture. Yes, it is important to know what's the main reason why they make it as a part of their culture, why they make it as a tradition. As Raymond Williams points out, such practice of tracing the origin through folk culture often serves to backdate culture, meaning they are preserving the past. Considering the fact that culture is never static and it's always subject to modification, through interaction between different culture, it is hard to have a precise definition of folk culture. According to Robert Redfield, who first identified the elements of folk culture to an ideal type which can be contrasted with a city life or urban culture. He defined folk culture to be the culture of societies which are small, isolated, self-sufficient, and mostly homogeneous in nature. So in such a close-knit societies, personal relationships are largely face-to-face and there is a huge interdependence among them. The families plays a significant role in regulating the behavior of the individuals. A folk culture may roughly be defined as a common way of life followed by some or all of the people in the villages, towns, or cities within a given specified area. The folk form is not something which is fixed, rather its contours is derived from the daily activities, lifestyle, work, leisure, problems, struggles, and interactions of the people. It can be traditional folk forms like folklore, folktale, folk games, folk songs, folk dances, and so on. Each form has its own potential to carry out the function of dissemination of knowledge and cultural elements, which is also basis of one's identity. There are also several other folk forms which is remain untouched, like the stories told by our grandparents, proverbs we use in our everyday lives, lullabies, and so on, which are also known as non-remunerative or non-paying folk forms. They are not written anywhere, but it is used as a spontaneous expression. They are not recognized by the educated elite and hence neglected. However, this should not mean that they have failed to carry out their functions for the society. They have always been a carrier of social and moral values from one generation to the other. There are two kinds of remunerative folk forms. One is communicating and the other one is non-communicating. These two are used for recreational purposes. Most of the communicative folk forms are dependent on religious functions and temple festivals for their survivals. And these are the example of communicative folk forms. Non-communicating folk forms depends on the body language to express emotion, thoughts, attitude, gestures without the need of the words. Folk culture in the Philippines. Lechon. The entire pig is spit roasted over coals with a crisp, golden brown skin served with liver sauce. Tinikling. It is a traditional folk dance where bamboo sticks are brought together and apart in a beat, while people dance in and out of them. Bahay Kubo, one of the most well-known folk songs in the Philippines. Bahay Kubo tells the story of a small hut. Barong. It is a traditional dress shirt that men wear on special occasions. Nipa hut, a traditional house on stilts for people who live on or near the water in the Philippines. Machetes. It is commonly used to cut down bamboo trees and help get through the tropical foresty part of the Philippines. These are the common folk games in the Philippines. We have Luksong Tinik, Patentero, Saranggola, Luksong Lubid, Piko, Chakad, Sungka, and Holen. Popularity of folk culture guarantees the survival of ancient customs also in modern times, thanks to those people who take care of our heritage. Even though if it is contrasted from the elite culture, there have been cases where few elements of folk cultures are assimilated into the classical culture. Whatever changes might have occurred in the form and content of folk culture, it still continues to perform its function of communication, of conveying a social or political message to the audiences. The summary of the lecture are: folk culture is stable and class-net, homogeneous in customs and ethnicity, usually a rural community and cohesive. Substances economies, goods are made by, according to tradition. Traditions controls, resistance to change. Anonymous origins diffuses slowly through migrations, develops over time. Clustered distributions, isolation or lack of interaction breed uniqueness and ties of physical environment. Some folk traits utilize astrology, songs, and food. Folk culture has witnessed a successive phase of recognition, glory, manipulation, and revival in the Philippines. Filipinos are family-oriented and often religious with an appreciation for art, fashion, music, and food. It has survived and continues to exist despite of all the factors affecting the form and content.